Hello everyone. I hope you're doing well in your current circumstances and that you have great plans for improvement. And I'm Lydia Ruth. Welcome to the Manse and to this edition of Homemaking Radio. And it gives me a chance to relate and record things that I hold deeply and believe strongly for future generations and for you also. And so if you will, and if you're new here, please click the link in the description box below the video and go to the page on which I have embedded this on my blog and listen to it there, because then you can see the pictures that go with it, the links that I have mentioned, and maybe some of the poems that I have read. And so we always start out with appearance, because it's appearance first in homemaking. I learned that from Sidetracked Home Executives, which is now, I think, Fly Lady. But back in the 70s when that was written, these two sisters called themselves the Slav sisters because they just couldn't seem to be ready for the day. And they just plunged into their home and got distracted, and they weren't ever ready. And so they said that one of the rules that they had to establish was appearance before anything. And so I would like to emphasize that, and also read something that I read somewhere, can't tell you where, and hope that you will get something out of this that pleases you. Or is there no pleasing you, as Hyacinth said in Wives and Daughters? You'll hear a lot of quotes from that. It's become my second language. And so one of the things that I was listening to about a month ago, a lady was saying that when women quit dressing up and quit looking pretty, quit seeking things that were pretty, quit following propriety, decorum, let me see what else, manners, etiquette, just the little things, even in the home, that the whole population of womanhood became more anxious. I thought that was interesting. And that we also have less confidence and less faith in a way, because in a way when we leave the home as our center, like homemaking, being a full-time homemaker, we've left the Lord in a way, because Titus 2 says that the younger women especially should be taught by the older women who have knowledge of this to be keepers at home, which means managers of the home. If you want to look up how a manager behaves and what they have to do, then you'll get a bigger picture of the whole homemaking thing. And it isn't just a mechanical thing, trying to keep everything in order and keep everything clean, but it is a place of welcome for the family. And one of the problems we have today is that the world and even members of our own family make it uncomfortable for the homemaker, because it's not well thought, it's not thought of in a well enough aspect. And today the homemaker is probably the most looked down upon person of all the different types of people. It is so sad. And you can raise and elevate that opinion by the way you dress, because it is one thing that's easy for you to change, and you don't have to buy anything. Just go into your clothing supply, press it all very nicely, match up things, and learn to have a good posture. The posture has a lot to do with how well your clothing looks. I wanted to come today and show you a couple of things that I learned in the little modeling etiquette school that I went to when I was very young, but I don't have the right kind of camera and I couldn't get far enough away to show you some of the things that I wanted to explain, so I will try to do it another time when someone can film me. And so today, let me see, I wanted to show you my teacup. This is so unique. This is a paper teacup and a saucer, and I ordered this. There are several companies that make paper teacups, floral paper teacups, and with handles. And if you'll do a search for it yourself, you'll be able to find it. But this had napkins with it, and it came in a little a little box, and there is a company called Talking Tables that produces 3-tiered tea things. It's all made out of paper, and I wanted to show you this because I have a special fondness for some of the scenes I have seen in old movies. But this is what, here's another one, and this is what the cup looks like, and you simply pull out the handle. Now, how many of you who are vital remember when all of the paper coffee cups had a handle on them? Do you remember that? You used to be able to peel off the handle from the side, and then they quit doing it, but now you can. I can't tell you what the name of this company is, but if you'll just do a search, you can find some of these on Amazon or Walmart.com. And here's another one. This is really, really cute. There's the saucer, and this is the cup, and it came flat, and all you have to do is open it up like this, and there's the handle. Open it up like that, and there's the handle, and there's the... I've already used quite a few of them for my grandchildren just because I wanted to experience it, and we had a tea party in the living room, and we used these cups. And what's really interesting, sometimes you can trace them and make other things out of them. So that was this one and this one. And so then I wanted to show you what I did with it. I remembered, now I would say, ladies, to get yourself grounded, sometimes you need to immerse yourself in a favorite story, book, movie. And I'm fond of Wives and Daughters, and I wish you would all order yourself one. Plus the Elizabeth Gaskell collection is wonderful, and you could get North and South and other things, which give you a glimpse into the real life of the normal homebody type people. It's not so much about royalty. And watch some of these scenes because they are just, you know, I could not find my Wives and Daughters book anywhere, and I'm always thinking maybe somebody made off with it, but there's not that many fanatics around to read things like that, so I probably misplaced it myself. I know it hasn't left the house, but this is what I used to call the magic house. You can have something in your hand 1 minute, turn around, and it's gone, and you look and look, it hasn't left the house. It's so interesting. It usually figures out that it's blended in with something or has fallen down behind something. So I wanted to show you what I did with this, because in one of the scenes of Wives and Daughters, I was so tickled to see Lady Harriet take Molly under her wing and try to restore her reputation, and because she had been seen with someone delivering a note to Mr. Preston for that piece, Cynthia. They call her that piece. So Lady Harriet was taking her around in her carriage, and one of the scenes showed a servant coming when she was they were both in the carriage, and the servant came and gave a drink to Harriet while she was sitting in the carriage, and then pulled the tray away. So the last time my descendants were here, I put some single tea bags on this little tray, and this is from the Dollar Tree, and they come in oval, and they come in they're really nice. You know, I've had this one for, sometimes you can get things at the dollar store that is quite high quality if you take care of them and have them for years. And I gave them some hot water, about a half a cup of hot water, and some tea bags I laid here, and I just gave the whole thing to them, the tray and everything on it, and they set it down on the dashboard, passed the hot water cups with hot water around, and let everyone choose a bag. And I just got a kick out of doing that and reenacting some of the finer things of some of my favorite stories and movies, and I thought you would get a kick out of it too. So also, let's see, where do we go from here? I have so much to tell you, and if you're not ready, get ready. And I will say again that it is true that when we left the enjoyment of getting ready, of looking in the mirror, fixing our hair, looking our best, being our best, having that time, that quiet centering time to get a good look at ourselves, see if we're in a good mood or not, or seeing if we looked critical. That when we left all that, when people started rushing us, and instead of a bath, you take a quick shower, in and out, you're so fast, and all the articles and magazines was how to get out of the house in 5 minutes, or they herded us out of the house to go somewhere else. I always like to use quotations around that. Somewhere else. We're getting ready to go somewhere else, and that's why many of us at this age are restless first thing in the morning, because we were so ingrained in getting up, catching the bus, going to school, or else later on going to work. And so it will take several days to settle down to this routine of the home that you will make for yourself. There's nobody there going to boss you or help you, so you're going to have to boss yourself. That's hard, isn't it? I can boss myself. I've got lists this long, but of course I never obey them. So now we have, because we have left pretty, and some people have seen gorgeous clothing in stores, but they feel self-conscious wearing them because no one else is. And if you ever seen these little shorts you can see on YouTube, there'll be a short of a woman walking down an ancient street in Milan, Italy, with a beautiful long dress and a hat, and people that are dressed like normal people are today, with their hoodies and their sweatpants and their horrible looking shoes, will stop and look as she goes by. Well, that's how we feel, when we go to the grocery store. Even if we're not really, quote, dressed up, even in a denim dress, you get a lot of stares. And so we're shamed into following the least beautiful pattern of behavior and dress, and people tend to morph into that more than into the higher standard. And so now we're going to have to set standards for ourselves, and there's no one going to come along and help us, and society isn't going to change. Remember when we used to wait and say, well, I'll wait till the fashions change. The clothing discourages me today, so I'll just wait till everything changes. Well, it's probably not going to, so you have to do it yourself. And you'll notice that the manufacturers and the designers, they start watching people on what they're doing, and then they will conform to what we want and what we are doing, and stop putting out the things that give us so little choice. Now, also, let's see, what can I tell you? What can I start with? I want to start out with poetry, because it'll give you some rhythm. Now, if you don't read poetry, I'd encourage you to read it aloud. Poetry read to yourself and silently absolutely does not have the same effect. It's like singing a song with no words, with no music, and with no voice, and it just doesn't have the same effect. This is good for your heart, good for your ears, good for your mental balance. And so I'm going to start with poetry, and I have the collected verse of Edgar A. Guest. Now, a lot of times we'll read about these, want to know more about these authors, and then we'll find out, oh, they weren't really, they didn't really have the same beliefs as we have. But as long as their verse is sound and not too objectionable, and if it's beneficial and is biblical, I will read it. So I guess everybody in the books we like, they were all a little off. And of course, we never know when something is written about an author, if it's really true or not. We don't know, because going so far back in history, look at the things they said about Jesus. Even in the scriptures, it says, and a report went out that he was this, or that he ate with these people, or that he was this or that, or that he had a double. So how do we know? We'll just do the best we can. So, ladies, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad I'm here too. My housework has just really begun to be extra lately, and if there's anyone in my family that's not feeling well and I have to do extra things for them, it makes it harder for me to come. But before I get started, I wanted to show you something behind me that I've been asked about, and that's these chairs. These are called Adirondack chairs from the Adirondack Mountains in Eastern America, and they are now making them out of vinyl and other materials. So I have some in my yard, and it doesn't matter if they get rained on, but these were made of wood. And one of the things that I read about them was that they were created for hilly places, and the shorter legs were in the back of the chair, so it could sit on a hill, and the shorter legs would make the chair more level, and then the longer legs remained. But I have found them, if I ever had the money to get another set, I would just put one indoors in a spare room or something, because they're just great for your body. They kind of lift your knees up a little bit, and they just are really comfortable. At first, when I saw them years ago, I never wanted them. I thought they were odd looking, but they're really great, and they're not using them just for the mountains anymore. You see them on the beach fronts, and you see them in people's yards, and a lot of people don't know the history of why they were designed that way. So I wanted to show you that picture on that painting back there. Okay. Now, I have read this poem before called At the Door, absolutely one of my favorites for men. And I don't mind talking to men because I'm just edifying you. I'm just making life more pleasant for you. So this is really important for you young men who have been homeschooled. You're at home, you're learning things, and then you start to go out and do things for other people, and you're making your way as a man in the world and trying to figure out a way how to earn a living so that you can have a family of your own. And this poem was written after a war, and also a lot of the men were going to work in very difficult places. Life was grueling back in the 1930s and 1940s. There's nothing new under the sun. And so I'm going to read this to you. It's called At the Door, and it's how to behave so that you have the most respect for the women and children at home. That is one thing that the homemaker, I am discovering, with all the women's rights and women's liberation and feminism stuff, the homemaker is still sometimes sidelined, pushed into a corner, ignored, disrespected, and not given any equality at all, because she's considered, if you're not out making money and working outside the home, they just consider you almost a non-person. But I think you can change that. We can change it through the next generation, and also to have confidence yourself and to dress well, look better than what they look like out there. And you have to feel sorry for the women that have to go to work because of the way they have to dress. They dress just like, they wear a uniform just like the men. They wear the same hats, the same logo, the same everything, and they have to dress like men. Now, this is the name of this poem, and I'll read the rest of the poems too, because I found a whole lot on the home, and then we'll talk more about some of the other things that I have brought forth out here. And this is called At the Door. It can apply to young ladies too. They've been out maybe with their friends, they're still teenagers, they're at home, they come in and they bring home the filth of the world in a way. They've got their music, they've got the songs, they're starting to wear the styles and talk the way of the world. Well, let's think about that, how you must not pollute the air of the home. Have you ever been around people that just being around them and being in a room cloistered with them and just breathing the same air kind of makes you feel uncomfortable and uneasy, or just a little bit off kilter because of their attitudes? Well, this poem shows it all. So let us listen, shall we? At the Door by Edgar Albert Guest. He wiped his shoes before his door, but ere he entered he did more. 'Twas not enough to cleanse his feet of dirt they gathered in the street. He stood and dusted off his mind, and left all trace of care behind. In here I will not take, said he, the stains the day has brought to me. Beyond this door shall never go the burdens that are mine to know. The day is done, and here I leave the petty things that vex and grieve. What clings to me of hate and sin, to them I will not carry in. Only the good shall go with me for their devoted eyes to see. I will not burden them with cares, nor track the home with grim affairs. I will not hide at my table sit, with soul unclean and mind unfit. Beyond this door I will not take the outward signs of inward ache. I will not take a dreary mind into this house for them to find. He wiped his shoes before his door, but paused to do a little more. He dusted off the stains of strife, the mud that's incident to life, the blemishes of careless thought, the traces of the fight he'd fought, the selfish humors and the mean, and when he entered he was clean. Shouldn't we all behave that way for the home? And if you have people in your home that's disrupting it, then that is a poem that you need to have them memorize before their next meal. And, you won't be eating with us until you have memorized this poem, or until you can read it aloud in great fluency. And then have them read it before they eat. Okay, so let's see. What else is there? It's called a vow. Now, I will give you the link to the Edgar A. Poems that you can get online. And while I'm reading this, maybe you can find something to do, or maybe you're getting ready today. And let's just do our best this hour. Instead of making long-term New Year's resolutions, let's just make an hour. Do our best this very hour. I have a new favorite online natural health doctor who's actually works in emergency, and I will put a link to him. He has a beautiful video on how to improve your health by doing 5 simple things. And he's like me. He believes that you just eliminate one bad habit, or instead of eating bad food, you eliminate something today, and just do it just for an hour. And it's just a wonderful way to live. It's not like I've got to change things for a whole lifetime, but just for an hour, or just for today. So this one's called a vow. I might not ever scale the mountain heights where all the great men stand in glory now. I may not ever gain the world's delights or win a wreath of laurel for my brow. I may not gain the victories that men are fighting for, nor do a thing to boast of. I may not get a fortune here, but then the little that I'll have I'll make the most of. I'll make my little home a palace fine, my little patch of green a garden fair, and I shall know each humble plant and vine as rich men know their orchard blossoms rare. My little home may not be much to see, its chimneys may not tower far above, but it will be a mansion great for me, for in its walls I'll keep a hoard of love. I will not pass my modest pleasures by to grasp at shadows of more splendid things, disdaining what of joyousness is nigh, because I am denied the joy of kings. But I will laugh and sing my way along. I'll make the most of what is mine today. And if I never rise above the throng, I shall have lived a full life anyway. And this speaks of royalty. People get envious and bitter because we're not born high into royalty. We have to struggle and work for everything. And we have to take care of ourselves and think for ourselves. And life's not mapped out for us. We have to make risks. We have to live with our mistakes. But listen, if you will, that even royalty can only sit in one chair at a time. They can only wear one outfit at a time. They can only eat one meal at a time. They still have to use the toilet just like you do. There is no difference except that one may have to learn and grow and another may never. So let's think about that. Each one has a chance to be useful. So now, here is another one I want to read to you. And it's called The Real Successes. And after a while, we'll get down to some more business here. The real successes. You think that the failures are many. You think the successes are few. But you judge by the rule of the penny, and not by the good that men do. You judge men by standards of treasure that merely obtain upon earth, when the brother you're snubbing may measure full length to God's standards of worth. The failures are not in the ditches. The failures are not in the ranks. They have missed the acquirements of riches. Their fortunes are not in the banks. Their virtues are never paraded. Their worth is not always in view, but they're fighting their battles unaided, and fighting them honestly too. There are failures today in high places. The failures aren't all in the low. There are rich men with scorn in their faces, whose homes are but castles of woe. The homes that are happy are many, and numberless fathers are true. And this is the standard of any by which we must judge what men do. Wherever loved ones are awaiting the toiler to kiss and caress, though in Brad streets he hasn't a rating, he still is a splendid success. If the dear ones who gather about him and know what he's striving to do have never a reason to doubt him, is he less successful than you? You think that the failures are many. You judge by men's profits in gold. You judge by the rule of the penny. In this true, success isn't told. This falsely man's story is telling, for wealth often brings on distress, but wherever love brightens a dwelling, there lives, rich or poor, a success. Now I want to tell you about, I'll read you another poem, but I wanted to tell you about a new book that I have, and hope that this is helpful to you. I was mentioning that there was an Eric Sloan book that I didn't have, and it was called The Cracker Barrel. And apparently there's a Cracker Barrel Volume 2 also, which eventually I'm going to get. But I learned it has various subjects in it, and I still haven't figured out why it was called The Cracker Barrel, but I will read that soon. But I wanted to tell you how we got the dollar sign. You know, it's an S with two lines going through it. Well, it's very simple. It was U plus S, meaning United States. And if you look at this real carefully, they tried to make a U with an S around it. Okay? Well, eventually that just became two lines. Now, isn't that interesting? I don't know what good that will do us, but I've just found it very interesting, and I think we ought to keep our minds active now, don't you? And so I'm going to read this poem here, and it's called When Mother Cooked with Wood, because Eric Sloan, he wrote a lot. He wrote these, I believe, in the 1940s, and he wrote a lot about wood, houses. This little section here is called Man and Wife, and about the little house. I might want to read that to you too. So, yes, I will read that to you by Eric Sloan, but I wanted to read you another poem. And since he wrote so much about wood, and I have told you about the little square pegs that went into round holes that held wood and buildings together, and how interesting that was, I want to read this part here because our food is so different. And listen to this. When Mother cooked with wood. Now, how many of you remember having the wood stove, and it had a little handle for the little burner plate that you lifted up and you could put wood down in the stove? And it had a little, what was the name? It's a cast iron stove and a little handle where you could open that. And we never thought much about it because everybody did it. And everyone cooked with wood. We didn't think much about it. But listen to what he says in this book, because he lived clear into, I don't know, I think he may have died in the early 1960s, Edgar Guest, or 50s. It's called When Mother Cooked with Wood. I do not quarrel with the gas, our modern range is fine. The ancient stove was doomed to pass from time's grim firing line. Yet now and then there comes to me the thought of dinners good and pies and cake that used to be when Mother cooked with wood. The axe has vanished from the yard, the chopping block is gone. There is no pile of cordwood hard for boys to work upon. There is no box that must be filled each morning to the hood. Time in its ruthlessness has willed the passing of the wood. And yet those days were fragrant days, and spicy days, and rare. The kitchen knew a cheerful blaze, and friendliness was there, and every appetite was keen for breakfasts that were good, when I had scarcely turned 13, and Mother cooked with wood. I used to dread my daily chore, I used to think it tough, when Mother at the kitchen door said I'd not chopped enough, and on her baking days, I know, I shirked whenever I could. In that now, happy long ago, when Mother cooked with wood. I never thought I'd wish to see that pile of wood again. Back then it only seemed to me a source of care and pain. But now I'd gladly give my all to stand where I once stood, if those rare days I could recall when Mother cooked with wood. Yes, that was interesting, and of course then the boys had work to do that was hard, and the girls too. We were all taught to do that. But nowadays, we must focus, since we don't have all that for our children. You who want to homeschool, or just are homeschooling yourself, or just want to uncover some of the mystery and the wonder of homeschooling, need to work on the building of good character, so that if things like that ever come back, you'll be safe around people who have an axe. Because in all the time we were growing up on the homesteads, all that populations that were doing homesteads, I think there were 350 homesteads on the Kenai Peninsula where I grew up at the time. There may have been more, but we never had any problem using any of these tools at all. In fact, very few even injuries, self-inflicted injuries or anything like that. And we had everything. We had knives and bows and axes and guns and everything. But you see, you have to teach character and morality that goes along with the use of these things. And of course today, even with what we use, we have to teach good character and morality to go with it, because anything you use can be dangerous if it's not used properly. So now let me see if I have any more here. The home builders. I'll read you one more, and then I'll read to you about Eric Sloan. And then we may do some serious talking about a few other things. This is called the home builders. The world is filled with bustle and with selfishness and greed. It is filled with restless people that are dreaming of a deed. You can read it in their faces. They are dreaming of the day when they'll come to fame and fortune and put all their cares away. And I think as I behold them, though it's far indeed they roam, they will never find contentment save they seek for it at home. I watch them as they hurry through the surging lines of men, spurred to speed by grim ambition, and I know they're dreaming then. They are weary, sick, and footsore, but their goal seems far away, and it's little they've accomplished at the ending of the day. It is rest they're vainly seeking, love and laughter in the gloam, but they'll never come to claim it, save they claim it here at home. For the peace that is the sweetest isn't born of minted gold, and the joy that lasts the longest and still lingers when we are old. It's no dim and distant pleasure. It's not tomorrow's prize. It's not the end of toiling, or the rainbow, or our sighs. It is every day within us. All the rest is hippodrome, and the soul that is the gladdest is the soul that builds a home. They are fools who build for glory. They are fools who pin their hopes on the come and go of battles of some vessel's slender ropes. They shall sicken and they shall wither, and shall never peace attain, who believe that real contentment only men victorious gain. For the only happy toiler under earth's majestic dome are the ones who find their glories in the little spot called home. Now, that made me think of something, and you know, I've had people tell me, well, I've read Wives and Daughters, or I've read this poem. How can you just read a book, put it down, and say, I've read it? I hear people saying, oh, I read that book in a day. Do you not stop after every few paragraphs and discuss it or talk about it and just stop and, look around and kind of think about it. I don't ever just like read through. I stop and muse over it a little bit and make comparisons and thoughts. And one of the things that this brought to mind was that you, as a teenage girl, if you're a young girl at home and you've been homeschooled, or you're home and you're starting to get a little restless and you're starting to look down your nose at your mother like she's an old fogey or something, is to think about your attitudes and how they are creating your future old age. Because what you are, your attitudes, your respectfulness, and your cooperativeness at home and your love is going to determine what kind of an older person you will be. And too many times we overlook it in young people at home. We mothers, we're busy, and we think, well, we'll just let them read this homeschool book and we'll be fine. But I always had mine come in, sit on a chair or stool while I was working in the kitchen, read me a few lines of something that was in a book, a school book, or whatever they were doing, and then we would discuss it and apply it. And that's where the joy comes from. And also, if you're a young girl at home, then you need to start taking notes of how the home is run. What do you do first? What do you do next? And where do you put things? And how do you take care of things? And how do you plan a shopping trip, a meal? How do you conduct yourself at the table? Well, I can remember back in the 1950s, and some of you ladies can too who are vital. Remember back in the 50s when the home economics classes used to show us how to behave at mealtime, what to talk about, how to eat, so you don't make other people sick, how to be neat and tidy, how to serve, and also how to sit down and respect others at a mealtime. Nowadays, nobody wants to eat together because of the way people act. And you are, if you will take notes on it, get yourself a nice book, start taking notes of everything that goes on in the household, and quit looking at it in a trivial manner. And also take notes of people's attitudes, how they are maybe destroying the ease with which people live at home, making people uneasy. If you're listening to something or watching something that your parents don't like or that isn't appropriate for everybody, that kind of thing is lacking in what you would say, trying to be kind and trying to be mindful of other people. It's selfish. And so take a notebook and start watching what goes around the house. Take over the house for a month. You girls, take over everything. The laundry, the dishes, the meals, the housekeeping and everything. Take over all that and then write it all down, and there you have stacked up a whole lot of teaching material. You may need it for when you're raising your children, or you never know, you might start teaching classes on it. I would really highly suggest it. Now, here is another thing too that I have written down here that I wanted to remind you of. Is girls at home, girls and boys at home, should be busy. There shouldn't be any time for foolishness. I mean, just constant foolishness or foolish activity or useless activities. They should be busy. And I'm trying to find the book that I used when mine were growing up. Now, I don't care for this publisher, the American Girls Handybook. There was one for boys too. I don't care for this publisher at all because they had an editorial in the front that was just so off. I would get them the American Girls Handybook. It's a reprint of an old book written in the 1800s. Get it from a different publisher than the one that I've got here, and it'll be wholesome. But one of the things that I got out of this that just helped girls so much was, well, let me just show you an example. It had all kinds of activities and things you could do with things you already had. This chapter was called Doorstep Party and Quiet Games for Hot Weather. It's for like when you're out on the porch. and it helps them to be more content at home. If you girls are not content at home, then what you need to do is study this chapter, Doorstep Party and Quiet Games for Hot Weather, so that you can help other people, younger people, be content at home. And you need to study this book and take it seriously. Get a notebook, blank notebook to take notes with, and make your own worksheets. And how to make a 5-minute, look at this, 5-minute conversation. And how to make an invitation, and how to create characters for stories. And now, in another part of it here was a heap of rubbish and what to do with it. What to do with all those empty containers and cartons that you are going to discard in the kitchen. And it shows how to make picture frames, boxes, mirrors, decorations, shelves, and different things. I had a book years ago that was similar. Also how to make lanterns. I had a book years ago, lanterns out of tin cans and jars, and I had a book years ago that showed how to take that corrugated cardboard. You know, that's the one with the filler in between that makes it a little stiffer, and how to make really pretty shelves that you actually used on your wall, and you could set something on it. And they were actually quite decorative. Of course, they painted them and, you know, applied other things. And it also has how to make children's toys in here. And of course, there will be some things that maybe you wouldn't like, but how to keep bouquets fresh for a long time. You think, well, what does that have to do anything? Well, these things, it's even got wildflowers on their preservation. This whole book and these things create contentment. You might think, well, what's the use of that? Create contentment. They are not less useful. They are not less useful than your current, what you listen with your earbuds and everything. That's absolutely not useful. And some of the games people do online, those are absolutely produce nothing. But if you learn to sew, and you learn to craft, and you learn how to tell stories, and you learn different things that actually produce something that you can do in hard times. You know, in hard times when we're cut off of all this stuff, this instant stuff, you've still got your hands, you've still got your brain, you've still got your voice, and perhaps you could be useful and make something. It's very good for your mind too. I like to sew, and I find that I'm not feeling myself unless once in a while I've got a project that I can work on. So I would really recommend this book for girls still at home, girls at home that are unmarried, and make them do this and bring the lesson. Start a notebook and do each chapter. But don't read things like, oh, I read that chapter. You've got to be able to explain it, and to explain it fluently, and to be enthusiastic about it. And like they had one here on how to create a lawn tennis game. Maybe you wouldn't be interested in that, but you could choose something else in here. And there's one here on china painting. You know, how to take a plain plate and how to, or a cup, and how to do that. And of course, be discerning with a book like this. It's called the American Girl's Handy Book, and they have the American Boy's Handy Book. But I would say get a good, I liked Wordsworth publications. Those are my favorite type of publications and printers, is Wordsworth. Can't figure out what happened to my Wives and Daughters book. I was going to read it to you today, but I will read from the Cracker Barrel. This is volume 1 by Eric Sloan. They claim that it was written in, I don't know what his dates were, but it was written by, some of these were printed by his wife after he died. And like in 1990, she printed them. So I'm going to read this man and wife chapter here in Eric Sloan's Cracker Barrel, number 1. Every now and then you hear of someone wanting to give a gift, but saying, I just don't know what to give. He has everything. Or a man wondering what he might give his wife for a wedding anniversary. Well, one of my enjoyments in this life has been to revive some of the good customs of the past. And one of the very fine customs that was giving the gift of trees. I bet that will solve many of your gift problems. When newlyweds moved into a new house in the old days, friends came over with fruit trees for the orchard and decorative trees for around the house. A husband would be certain to plant a fine man and wife tree in front of the house and at both sides of the front entrance. Many an ancient house has been properly dated by finding the age of the huge trees, and many a house has deteriorated or been destroyed, leaving only those trees as a symbol of what the house represented at one time, a home for a newlywed couple. When iron was made with the heat of charcoal, many farmers sold their woodlots to charcoal dealers until the only farm trees left were the orchards and the two trees in front of the farmhouse. It is said that there were places in New England where you know what New England is, don't you? It was the first 13 states of the U.S. on the eastern, I guess they call it the eastern seaboard partly, and part of some of them were inland, but there were places in New England where you could climb a high hill and count the farmhouses by picking out these twin trees, the only trees left tall enough to be seen. Now, isn't that interesting? There were two trees in the front yard. I have a friend in real estate who presents each customer with a tree for their new house. I used to send them champagne, he told me, to toast their new home, but a tree lasts a long while and adds to the value of the property. Maybe I'll get to sell the same house again someday, and that tree will help to raise the price and sell it. Each year, I present my wife with a gift Christmas tree. See, that's a really good idea, too. You can buy these Christmas trees in the grocery store. They're potted, they're in soil, and then afterwards you can put them outside and grow them. When the holidays are over, we plant it on the grounds. I always forget what my other gifts were, but those trees are an unending delight for the rest of my life and for those who follow. I will admit it was a dubious delight to see the Christmas tree I planted the first year I moved to the country. Its towering height and gnarled trunk make me all too conscious of my own age. In this day when we no longer build for future generations, and trees almost always outlive the houses that man builds, I'd like to revive the custom of planting meaningful trees. The tree was originally the emblem of America before the stars and stripes came into existence. For the wealth of the New World at that time was its wood. He has a book about wood, and it's called Sacred Wood, something like that. Let me see what The Reverence for Wood is the name of that book. I don't have that book. And every time you plant a tree in honor of someone or some occasion, instead of sending flowers or champagne or candy, you are adding something valuable to your country and thereby being patriotic. In colonial times, on a certain day called Rogation Sunday, it was the custom for children to plant trees along the boundaries of the farm. Each year on that day, the whole family would walk the boundaries and inspect these trees. Of course, the children did not realize it, but they were in that way becoming familiar with land that would someday be inherited by them, and they would know the exact boundaries because they themselves had planted the bounding trees. Even now, many of the old deeds tell how the land runs from this tree to that tree, although the trees have long since been chopped down. The new boundaries are now an iron post or a cement block, and I guess the whole land and countryside have less lore and romance and trees. Very good, very interesting. Now, I wanted to also state that one of the reasons that I really enjoyed homeschooling was I know some people are really well disciplined. They'll get up and they'll have a verse in the Bible that they're going to read, but I never could do that and relate it to anything as well. But when I got into homeschooling, it just took all that burden away because every page and every lesson, this is called grammar and composition, had a verse in it. And we could discuss the verse while discussing how to dissect the sentence. And here's one of them. Well, there are two of them here. And this is subjects and verbs. Paul went to Iconium, a city in Asia Minor, on one of his missionary journeys. Now, of course, we would we put one line under the subject and 2 lines under the verb. Remember that? But then we would discuss this. I wonder where Iconium is. Okay, where's Asia Minor? And then we would read more about where he went and who he spoke to, and so that would take us to the Bible. And then this one. When Peter spoke on the day of Pentecost, many people were added to the Lord's church. Now that's interesting because Peter would be the subject and spoke would be the verb. And then we'd find out, well, what was the day of Pentecost? And how many people were added to the church? And what did that mean? And so we would look that up in Acts chapter 2. The Son of Thunder was the title given to John the Apostle. Why was he called the Son of Thunder? Of course, we know Son of Thunder would be the subject and would be the verb. So then we would discuss this, and so there you would get your Bible study in, and it would be integrated into your lessons and to your life. And we would also put the books down, and school was over, we'd still be talking about it. So that is what I wanted to share with you about that. And then another book that I'm trying to go through some things and put things back properly and get that bookshelf cleaned out, is a book called Speech for Christian Schools. I always bought the teacher's edition because they included the children's study book as well, and I didn't believe in hiding anything from my kids, so I didn't care if they saw what the teacher's edition said. I didn't care if they wanted to see the answers. That was fine, because you don't have to guess at everything. If there's an answer, let them have the answers. You know, they don't have to guess, and it's not a big secret. You know, I'm not going to give them a test. But I loved this book because for the first time I discovered, you know, you can read in the Bible about speech and how you have to let your yes be yes and your no be no, and let your speech be seasoned with grace and all this. But this one made a whole course out of it for children, and I loved it. And so I wanted to see here what it said in this little box. They'd have these interesting little boxes, you know, to color and to read. The goals of a speaker. Daily acknowledge that it is God who enables the speaker. Too often, anyone who is making a speech or is a speaker are vulnerable to conceit or vulnerable to thinking he's pretty great. So we want to be really careful. And that way, if you acknowledge that God enables the speaker. 2. Endeavor to communicate an accurate, clear picture of the character and the works of God to others. And they've got a couple scriptures you can read about this. And so make sure, if you're speaking to someone in your family, now this is about making speeches, you know, like someone who's going to deliver a lesson or do a speech or a book review or something like that. But in general conversation, I think these are good principles to follow. If in any communication you have at home with your family, communicate an accurate, clear picture of the character and the works of God to others. Say if they're doing something or they are kind of polluting the home atmosphere or making it unpleasant for other people, show them Philippians 4:8. Is this good? Is this lovely? If they're arguing, is this good? Is lovely? Is this the kind of communication that you think the scriptures teach? They may say, no, it's not, but we're going to do it anyway, you know. But still, you are still responsible to say something. And whether or not they go for it or believe in it or repent, you still are obligated to say something. And I've seen too many parents who will say, well, I don't really want my daughter to dress that way, but it's just not worth the fight. So they don't want, you know, they don't want to say anything. And I don't think that mothers like to fight or even start a fight, but if they say anything, the daughter will turn, you know, will attack her and say, why are you always picking on me or something, and get away from the subject. Just get away from the subject and kind of run their mother's personality down, or say that she's negative or something. But so what you need to do as a mother is go back to the subject. Is this a sound good thing for you to do? What about that style you're wearing? What about that music you're listening to? Tell me where it is in here that is edifying and glorifying, and how does it line up with Philippians 4:8, what's true, good, and lovely, and anything like that. Compare it to Scripture, and they'll go on and on about your personality, and they'll say, well, you're not a qualified older person because you are this or that or the other thing. Go back, just ignore that and go back to the subject. Well, when you're ready to tell me, what the best thing to do is, when you're ready to tell me the answer to my question, how does this line up with being reasonable? Remember Philippians 4:7, it says, let your reasonableness be known. And remember, we studied that by looking up the Koine Greek, and it meant refinement. Let your refinement be known to everyone. And how does this line up with prayer, thanksgiving, and the other things that this book says? Don't be and rejoicing. How edifying is this? And you just keep going back to the subject, because people, when you're right about something, people will object very strongly, and they'll start attacking you. And so you have to go back to the subject. If you want them to, like, say, wipe their feet when they come in the door, and it's a really muddy day, and they don't want to, they'll say, you're always picking on me. You say, could you wipe your feet? And you just continue to go back to the subject. They'll eventually say, you have a one-track mind. And you can just say, well, there's dirt on your shoes, you'll have to wipe your feet. And so this third one was the one that I loved. Remember the eternal worth of the listeners and treat them with respect and kindness. And so that's why it's so good to take a refinement course or learn to have a good appearance. That's going to go a long ways toward your convincing your family of certain things, is your appearance and your demeanor and your posture and your speech, and remembering the eternal worth of your listeners and delivering your message with respect and kindness. Analyze, listen and analyze and organize your ideas and use understandable language. Now, sometimes the toddlers understand faster than the teenagers, because you can say yes or no or don't do that or come here, and they understand that. So we might have to go back to their roots, their original training as toddlers, and go back to the simple language. So gain and maintain the audience's attention in order to communicate the intended message. Now, there's a lot more to this, but I wanted to read that to you just to share with you why I liked it so much. And of course, now we're in an era where I think that all of you need to write your own little manuals on speech and communication, because that things may have changed, your family has special needs or whatever. Let me see if there's anything else that I can read to you here. I'm almost finished here. Again, ladies, there is a scripture, Titus 2:5, where it talks about the younger women. The older women are to teach the younger women to be keepers at home, and that means managers at home, workers at home. And for some reason, work in the house is demeaned and looked down upon. But if we'll start approaching it in a nice way, and I don't want to say professional, but have nice paper and a nice pen and a notebook, and go around as though this is really a high-end type of job, like you were running a fancy hotel, and check all the rooms, and teach your daughters to follow you around and do what you do. Sometimes housework has been portrayed to our young women as negative and a negative work, but yet working outside at a grocery store or a bookstore or something is considered, very, very important work. But I tell you what, you have so much more freedom in the home. And one of the things you young girls will, what do you say when you compromise something, you put it in jeopardy, is when you don't respect the home, and when you don't keep it clean, and when you don't clean your room, you're losing respect for the home. You are in danger of losing your home. How would you like to live in your car? How would you like to live in the backyard in a tent? Here's the problem, is that most people don't think that will ever happen. They'll get upset with their parents and they'll want to leave home and end up living with someone who is a slob and trash everywhere. And they don't really understand that their basic training comes from the home, and that you jeopardize. It's like I said before, years ago we learned that you take $20, this was back in the day, when you could get something for $20, you take $20 to do your shopping, and if you find something that costs $20 that you want, we would go and have a cup of coffee first at a little nearby restaurant. Some of the grocery stores had little places in them that you could do that, and you would think about how long your husband had to work for that $20, and that was before you could get $20 an hour, and then you would have a chance to change your mind. And think about that. What are you losing by being disrespectful of the home? Cleanliness is so important, and if you have manners and cleanliness, I told you can get along in life if you have two things: manners and cleanliness. Manners means to be courteous, to care. It's care for other people. It's care and concern for other people. Manners and cleanliness make you care about what other people see, what they smell, what they perceive, and whether or not you've made their day a pleasant day or, quote, ruined their day. So if you have these two things, even if you're not good at any kind of intellectual studies, or you didn't really do well in homeschool, but if you have those two things, manners and cleanliness, you have the world, because you can learn anything and you can do anything, and you're pleasant to be around. So manners and cleanliness. So you ladies at home, if you are disappointed in your children, the best thing you to do is live the life you wanted them to live. I have said this over and over again. Increase your femininity. Learn the difference between masculine and feminine. Increase your thankfulness. There's nothing better for your health, for your youth, to restore your youth and your demeanor, as thankfulness. To get up in the morning and to be thankful. How many of you have gotten in the habit of waking up with dread of the day ahead? And if you possibly have the energy, in the early afternoon, get your house ready for you to go to bed, so that when you wake up, you've treated yourself to a nice place. You treat yourself to a nice clean bathroom, so that when you wake up, you can go into the bathroom without having to shove things aside, and get your bath or shower, and treat yourself. Start in the early afternoon and get it ready. There have been several ladies over the years, blogs when blogging was popular, that would talk about how they got their house. What would they say? They closed shop, or they shut down their house for the evening. Close the drapes and lock the doors, and turn the bedding back, and put on the little side lamps, or just the things that they would do to get ready for the evening, and these little rituals. And so treat yourself nice. You're a child of God, and we talked about how the Bible says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Well, that meant, I looked up the Greek on that, and that meant you carefully, thoughtfully, and worthily and wholly made. And so you want to take care of yourself and take care of your home, because that's your dwelling place that's going to shelter you. And so if you're disappointed, and your children aren't living up to what you had hoped, then what you have to do is do everything that you wanted them to do. Be everything that you wanted them to be. Be respectful and respectable, and have a respectable home, and don't give up. They would like to see you just let it all go and not worry about it, and then cry. They want to walk in and see you red-eyed and cried and under the covers because they're rebelling. But you don't do that. And so live your best by the hour. Live your best life by the hour. And if you have failed today, you can start over. You go in the bathroom, get your shower, start over, change your clothes, and have a better attitude. I want to read this one scripture before I leave, and I've probably forgotten like 25% or more of what I had intended, and that is to have a standard for yourself. And there's always was it 2 Timothy 2:14, or was it 1 Timothy? I don't know, where it talks about young women are to guide the home and be keepers at home. And Titus 2, keepers at home. Learn what keepers means. It means managers, and it means workers, and do that, because that is, silence is sometimes golden, and the example is sometimes louder than words. And wasn't there a poem I read to you not long ago, and that's, you're writing a gospel, a chapter each day. Men learn what you, I don't know, I don't have my little phone here where I kept track of it. They hear what you say. Say, what is the gospel according, they watch what you do, what is the gospel according to you, and so they will remember that. And so, ladies, I hope that this has been somewhat helpful, but I will read that last verse to you from Philippians 4, which I've been harping on for a long time, and it was these things that you can do to lift up, to edify, to lift up, and to keep yourself stable, keep yourself even. People ask me, how are you feeling? Well, I'm even today. I'm on even keel. That's a nautical expression from the ships, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you more about that. Rejoice in the Lord always. Make sure you rejoice. Increase your rejoicing. Look that up and see how you may rejoice. Let your reasonableness, and some versions say gentleness, but the Greek says towards refinement, be known to everyone. Don't be anxious. Pray, increase your prayer. Give thanksgiving. And I think there are several things you can find on YouTube, like your brain on gratefulness, your brain on thanksgiving. It's amazing what it can do for you. And so it promises peace that will guard your hearts and minds. And then it continues by saying, okay, now here's what you fill your brain with. Whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's just, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's commendable, whatever's excellent, whatever's worthy of praise. Think about these things. So you need to use your home to guard and guide the mind, and to edify and lift up. But most of all, if no one around you is on the same page, to lift yourself up and to keep on that path and on that track, because you are the one who's going to be responsible for you, and you are going to have to be the best example you can be, whether they follow you or not, and don't give up on it, because it will make you a healthier, happier, and younger person. Well, the other people, the ones that mocked you, the ones that don't want to cooperate, the ones that are sneering, they're just going to get old a lot faster than you. You're going to outlive them. So we'll talk to you later, and I hope you have a wonderful time. Stay close to Christ. Bye.